A young billionaire is approached in winter by two hungry twin girls who beg, "Please, sir, buy this ring. We need to buy medicine for our mom." When he examines the object, he can hardly believe what he sees. Snowflakes danced under the streetlights, creating a silent ballet on the deserted streets of Manhattan. Michael Anderson adjusted his cashmere scarf against the biting wind, his footsteps echoing on the snow-covered sidewalk. For a man who ran a tech empire worth billions, these nighttime walks were his only moment of peace, a connection to the young dreamer he once was, before the money, before the success, before all the choices that brought him here. The watch on his wrist read 9:47 p.m. The temperature had dropped sharply earlier that evening, emptying the usually busy streets of the Upper East Side. Michael relished this silence, so rare in a city that never slept. It was in these moments that he let his mask slip. Not the relentless CEO of Anderson Tech, not the billionaire on the covers of business magazines, just Michael, 35 years old, bearing the regrets he carried. That was when he heard it. A low sob, almost lost in the howl of the wind. Michael stopped, his senses sharpened by the quiet night. The sound came again, this time accompanied by a childish murmur. "Do you think he'll help us, Em? He has to help, Emmy. Mom needs—" Turning toward the voices, Michael felt his heart skip a beat. There, partially hidden in the shadows of a service entrance, stood two girls. Identical twins. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Their thin coats flapped in the wind, clearly inadequate for a night like this. Their little faces were red from the cold, tiny noses sniffling as they tried to keep each other warm. "My God, what are you doing out here on a night like this?" Michael instinctively moved closer, already unbuttoning his coat to offer it to the children. The girls looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them before the one on the right stepped forward, holding something out in her trembling little hand. "Please, sir, could you buy this? Our mum is sick and needs medicine." The object swung slightly in the small girl's hand, catching the light from the nearby street lamp. Michael leaned in to get a better look, and felt as though all the air had been sucked out of his lungs. It was impossible, absolutely impossible. But there it was, the ring, not just any ring, but that ring. The blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, set in a delicate white gold band with Art Nouveau details. The ring he had chosen 6 years ago, saving for months while his startup was just beginning to take off. The ring he gave to Sarah on a night not too different from this, under the snow in Central Park, back when he was at the start of his rise. The ring Sarah had been wearing the last time he saw her. Where did you get this?" His voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable. The other girl came forward, her big, pleading eyes fixed on him. "It's our mum's. She doesn't know we took it, but—" Her voice faltered, tears beginning to form. "She's so sick. We heard her crying last night because she didn't have money for the new medicine." Michael looked at the girls as though he were in a trance. Now that they were closer, under direct light, he could clearly see their faces. The shape of the eyes, the delicate outline of the chin, even the way the one on the left lightly bit her lower lip. Gestures and features so painfully familiar that his chest tightened. A flashback hit him like a train. Sarah at the jewelry store, her eyes shining the first time she saw the ring. "It's perfect, Mike," she had whispered, tears of happiness streaming down her face as he knelt right there in the middle of the store. The salesman had tried to show him more expensive rings, more appropriate for an up-and-coming businessman, but Sarah wouldn't hear of it. "This one has your soul in it," she said. "I can feel all the love you put into choosing it." "What are your names?" Michael asked gently, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I'm Emma," said the girl on the right, still holding the ring. "Emily," murmured the other, moving closer to her sister. "And your mom? What's her name?" The girls hesitated, years of warnings about not talking to strangers clearly weighing on their young minds. But there was something in Michael's eyes, a blend of pain and hope, that seemed to reach them on a level they themselves did not understand. "Sarah," Emma finally answered. "Sarah Matthews." The world seemed to spin around Michael. Sarah had kept her maiden name. Sarah was sick. Sarah had daughters, twins. Twins who would have been conceived around the time he left to expand his company on the West Coast. Twins who had his eyes, Sarah's smile, and an age that made his heart pound with possibilities he scarcely dared consider. A particularly strong gust of wind made the girls shiver violently, pulling Michael back to immediate reality. Questions and revelations would have to wait. For now, there were two children freezing in front of him, desperate enough to steal their mother's engagement ring. "It's too cold out here," he said, finally able to move. He removed his coat and wrapped it around the two, who immediately snuggled into the warmth of the thin fabric. "There's a diner nearby. How about we get some hot chocolate while we talk about how to help your mum?" The girls looked at each other again. That silent communication that seemed so natural between twins. Emma still gripped the ring firmly. "Mom said not to go anywhere with strangers," Emily declared, though her eyes betrayed how tempted she was by the idea of hot chocolate. Michael felt a sad smile form on his lips. Sarah had always been protective. Of course she would teach her daughters well. "You're absolutely right. How about this? The diner is right over there. We can see it from here." He pointed to the cozy lights of the establishment on the corner. "It has big glass windows, and everyone can see inside. I promise we'll just talk about how to help your mom, nothing else." Another moment of silent communication between the twins. Finally, Emma extended the ring again. "Are you going to buy it?" Michael looked at the jewel that once represented all his hopes and dreams. "Yes," he replied softly, "I'll buy it, and I'll make sure your mom gets all the medicine she needs." The girls smiled, identical and radiant, making Michael's heart ache with how familiar it felt. As he gently guided them toward the diner, keeping a respectful distance yet close enough to shield them from the wind, his mind raced with the implications of that night. 6 years ago, he chose ambition over love, convinced he was making the right choice, the mature choice. Now fate had conspired to bring back not only the symbol of that love, but also its possible consequences, in the form of two little girls bearing his features mixed with Sarah's. The snow continued to fall, but Michael hardly felt the cold. His world, so carefully constructed over the last 6 years, had just been turned upside down by a chance encounter on a winter's night. And as he watched the twins approach the illuminated diner, he knew his life would never be the same. Tony's diner was one of those places seemingly frozen in time, with red leather booths and gleaming chrome panels. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and waffles mingled with the welcoming warmth that enveloped Michael and the twins as soon as they entered, leaving Manhattan's icy night behind. "You can choose where you want to sit," Michael said gently, watching the girls, still bundled in his expensive coat, look around in wonder. Emma and Emily picked a table by the window, where they could see the snowflakes dancing under the streetlights. A waitress, an older woman with graying hair and a kind smile, approached with menus. "3 hot chocolates, please," Michael ordered before they even sat down. "And could you bring some waffles with strawberries and whipped cream?" He glanced at the twins, who nodded enthusiastically. While they waited, Michael couldn't take his eyes off the girls. Emma had Sarah's determined manner, the way she lifted her chin when she spoke. Emily, though quieter, shared with her sister that penetrating gaze that seemed to see through people, exactly the way Sarah did. Memory hit him like a wave. 6.5 years ago, Columbia University Library. "You're taking up my favorite table." Michael looked up from his programming books, meeting the most intense gaze he'd ever seen. The girl in front of him held a stack of literature books against her chest, her brown hair in a messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. "Sorry, I didn't see your name on it," he replied, a playful grin tugging at his lips. "Very funny." She rolled her eyes at me, but a smile threatened to appear. "I've been sitting here for 2 years. It's the only spot with the perfect lighting to read Austen. Well, I've been programming for," he checked his battered watch, "14 hours straight. So I think I've earned rights to this table today." She raised an eyebrow, letting the smile finally appear. 14 hours? That explains your zombie look. "Hey! Some of us have to work hard to keep our scholarships." Something in his tone must have sounded more bitter than he intended, because her smile softened. Without asking, she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Sarah Matthews," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Michael Anderson," he replied, noting how his rough hand from Odd Jobs contrasted with her delicate one. "So, Michael Anderson, how about we share the table? You can keep being a programming zombie, and I'll read my Austen. Everyone wins." That was how it began. "Present. Are you okay, sir?" Emily's voice brought him back. The waitress had arrived with the hot chocolates and waffles, and the twins were watching him curiously. "I'm fine," he smiled, sliding the plates toward them. "Go ahead and eat." While the twins devoured the waffles with the hearty appetite of their age, Michael plunged back into his memories. 6 years ago. "Your parents are going to hate me," Michael muttered, adjusting for the 10th time the cheap tie he'd bought specifically for the dinner. Sarah laughed, fixing the tie he had just messed up again. "They just need to get to know you better, to see the brilliant, determined man I see." But Michael was right. The dinner was a disaster. Sarah's father, a renowned surgeon, barely disguised his contempt for the scholarship student who works as a waiter. Her mother, a socialite from the Upper East Side, spent the entire evening making veiled remarks about the importance of the right connections and keeping the family standard. Sarah cried the whole way back to her dorm. "They have no right," she sobbed on his shoulder. "They have no right to judge what we have." That night, Michael promised himself he would change his life. Not for her parents, but for Sarah, to give her everything she deserved. The following months were a roller coaster. Michael juggled his studies, 3 part-time jobs, and the development of his first app. Sarah was his rock, his constant. On the nights she found him asleep over his laptop in the library, she would gently wake him with coffee and a kiss. When he doubted himself, she reaffirmed her faith in him. The proposal was nothing like he had planned. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, when Sarah showed up at his tiny dorm room with homemade soup because she found out he had a cold. "Marry me," he said, his voice husky from the flu, still in his worn pajamas. Sarah froze with the spoonful of soup halfway to his mouth. "What? I know I don't have much to offer right now," he continued, pulling a small worn-out box from the drawer beside the bed. "But I have love, determination, and a promise. I promise I'll build a bright future for us." The ring was simple, a small sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. It had taken months to save up for it, collecting every tip, every extra hour. "It's perfect," Sarah whispered, tears rolling down her face as he placed the ring on her finger. "Absolutely perfect." "Present, Mr. Michael." Emma's voice brought him back. The waffles were gone, and the girls were sipping their hot chocolate, their cheeks flushed from the warmth. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you really going to help our mum?" Michael felt his heart tighten. "I will, yes, you can trust me." "Then you have to come meet her," Emily exclaimed, excited. "She'll be so happy." Michael hesitated. "Not today, little ones. But tell me where she lives so I can help." The girls exchanged uncertain glances before Emma took a napkin and asked the waitress for a pen. With the irregular handwriting of a 5-year-old, she wrote down an address in the Bronx. The rest of the night went by in a blur. Michael insisted on paying for a taxi to take the girls safely home, gave them enough money for Sarah's medicine, far more than the ring's value, and stood watching until the taxi disappeared into the snowy night. Only then did he allow himself to be completely overwhelmed by his emotions. 6 years ago. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, Sarah. Michael paced back and forth in his tiny apartment, waving the email in his hands. The investors loved the app. "They want me to go to San Francisco immediately to start developing the company." Sarah sat on the only chair in the apartment, the engagement ring shining on her hand. "For how long?" 6 months, maybe a year at most. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "After that, we can truly start our life together. No worries about money, no more hiding from your parents. A year is a long time, Mike. It'll fly by, you'll see, and on weekends I'll come back to see you, I promise." But they both knew it was a hard promise to keep. The startup would require total dedication. Sarah tried to smile, but her eyes were brimming with tears. "You have to go," she finally said. "It's your dream." The goodbye at the airport was bittersweet. Sarah kissed him as if trying to memorize every detail, the sapphire ring sparkling under the fluorescent lights. "I love you," she whispered. Go out there and conquer the world. It was the last time he saw her. Present in his penthouse apartment, Michael grabbed his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. James, it's Michael Anderson. I need your services. Yes, it's urgent. I need you to find out everything about Sarah Matthews, last known address in the Bronx. He gave James the address Emma had written. I want to know everything. Financial situation, medical condition, history of the last 6 years. And James, be discreet. Hanging up, Michael walked to the glass wall of his apartment. Down below, Manhattan continued its eternal dance of lights and shadows, the snow now falling more softly. In his hands, the sapphire ring caught the city lights, each facet telling a different story, of young love and ambitious dreams, of hard choices and deep regrets, and now, of two little girls with eyes too familiar to be a coincidence. That night, Michael Anderson, the billionaire, the tech titan, the man who had everything, couldn't sleep. His world had been turned upside down by a chance encounter on a snowy night, and the implications both terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Somewhere in the Bronx, two little girls raced home with money for their mother's medicine, and Michael knew his life would never be the same. The past he had tried to leave behind was about to catch up with him, and this time, he wouldn't run. The snow kept falling over New York, covering the city with a white mantle of possibilities and second chances. The door of the small apartment in the Bronx creaked open, and Emma and Emily burst in, their faces lit up with a joy Sarah hadn't seen in weeks. Mom! Mom! We did it! They shouted in unison, jumping excitedly. Sarah stood up from the worn couch where she was grading school papers, her pale face marked by the chronic fatigue of the past few months. What did you do, my little ones? Emma took an envelope from the pocket of her thin coat and held it out proudly. Money for your medicine, Mom. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. How did you get that? The twins exchanged looks, that silent communication they always seemed to share. Emily bit her lip, a gesture Sarah recognized as a sign of nervousness. We sold that pretty ring you kept in the drawer, Emma finally confessed. Color drained from Sarah's face. Her hand instinctively flew to her neck, where she used to wear the ring on a chain when the girls were babies. The sapphire ring. You sold... Sorry, Mom, Emily whispered, tears starting to form in her eyes. But you were crying last night because of the medicine, and we wanted to help. To whom? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Who did you sell the ring to? The girls looked at each other again. A really nice man, Emma answered. He wore a fancy coat and bought us hot chocolate. You went with a stranger? Sarah's voice was thick with panic. No, Mom. He was really nice, Emily protested. We stayed in a diner with big windows where everyone could see us. And he gave us a lot of money, more than we needed for the medicine. Sarah sank onto the couch, her legs too weak to hold her. That ring was her last connection to... She shook her head, pushing away the memories. What was his name? The twins frowned, thinking hard. We don't remember, Emma admitted. But he had kind eyes, Mom. Like ours. Sarah felt her heart tighten at those words, but before she could ask more, a familiar dizziness washed over her. She closed her eyes, taking deep breaths, trying to steady her irregular heartbeat. On the other side of the city, at the same moment, Michael was in his office at the top of Anderson Tech when James Cooper arrived, carrying a thick folder. The private investigator, a middle-aged man with keen eyes, looked more serious than usual. I have the information you requested about Sarah Matthews, he said without preamble, placing the folder on the glass and mahogany desk. Michael took a deep breath, bracing himself. Tell me. It's not good, James began, opening the folder. Sarah Matthews, 34 years old, elementary school teacher, works at 2 different schools to support her twin daughters, Emma and Emily, age 5. He paused meaningfully. There's no father listed on the girls' birth certificates. Michael's heart pounded, but he kept his expression neutral. Go on. She was diagnosed with a serious heart condition about 4 years ago. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a genetic disease that causes the heart muscle to thicken. There is treatment, but the medications are expensive, and the basic health plan she has through the school doesn't cover everything. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, guilt consuming him. The apartment? Small, 2 bedrooms, in an old building in the Bronx. 3 months behind on rent. The landlord has been understanding due to her medical situation, but her routine. James glanced at his notes. She wakes up at 5:30 a.m. to get the girls ready for school. Teaches at St. Mary Elementary School from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then she goes straight to PS 47, where she teaches until 6 p.m. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, she also tutors privately in the evenings to make ends meet. And the girls? They stay at St. Mary, where Sarah got them a scholarship. After that, an elderly neighbor looks after them until Sarah comes home from her second job. James hesitated. Sir, there's one more thing. The doctors are worried. The stress of her routine is worsening her heart condition. In her last appointments, tests showed... That's enough, Michael interrupted, his voice raw. He stood and walked to the glass wall, looking out at the city below. How much does she owe in total? Hospital bills, renters, everything. James quoted an amount that, to Michael, was equivalent to what his company earned in a matter of minutes. For Sarah, it was a mountain of impossible debt. Once James left, Michael remained motionless for a long time, absorbing everything. Sarah, his Sarah, was sick, working herself to the bone, raising 2 girls alone. 2 girls who had his eyes, born less than 9 months after he left. The weight of reality struck him like a punch. They were no longer just suspicions. The dates, the similarities, everything lined up. Emma and Emily were his daughters whom he had never met, who had grown up without a father while he racked up billions. His daughters who, the previous night, were shivering in Manhattan streets trying to sell an engagement ring to buy medicine for their mother. Shame and guilt consumed him. How could he simply walk into their lives now? What right did he have, after 6 years? Sarah had chosen not to tell him about the pregnancy. Maybe she hated him. Maybe she would never forgive him for leaving. Michael sank heavily into his chair, the sapphire ring in his pocket weighing on him like an anchor of memories and regrets. He needed to help, there was no doubt. But how to do it without causing more pain, without forcing his presence into the life Sarah had built with such sacrifice? The answer came as a whisper of conscience. Anonymously. He could use his influence and resources to help them from a distance, ensuring they never lacked anything again, that Sarah received the best medical care. It was the least he could do, a chance to atone for years of involuntary absence, to ease the suffering his departure had caused. Grabbing the phone, he began making calls, first to his lawyer, then to his accountant. A plan began to form in his mind, a way to help Sarah and the girls without revealing his identity. As night fell over New York, Michael Anderson, the man who had built a tech empire, faced the greatest crisis of his life. Somewhere in the Bronx, 2 girls who carried his blood slept peacefully, unaware that their father had just discovered their existence. And Sarah, the woman he had never stopped loving, battled a disease that might have been properly treated had he been around. The weight of these revelations crushed him, yet also spurred him to action. Tomorrow, he would begin his plan of anonymous assistance. For now, he let himself feel pain, regret, and a renewed love that threatened to break his heart. The New Dawn Foundation is pleased to inform you that your application for medical assistance has been approved. Sarah reread the letter for the 3rd time, her hands trembling slightly. The letterhead was elegant, professional, but something felt off. She had never applied for assistance from any foundation. In fact, she had never even heard of it. All your past medical expenses have been paid, and a fund has been established to cover your future treatments. Across town, in his office at Anderson Tech, Michael reread his lawyer's confirmation email. The foundation had been set up in record time, with all the necessary documentation to look like a legitimate organization of many years. The money was already being transferred, debts paid, arrangements made. Everything is ready, Mr. Anderson, his assistant Margaret informed him. The principal at St. Mary confirmed receipt of the winter donations. They'll be distributed this week, with priority to the neediest families. Michael nodded, his mind returning to the image of the twins shivering in the cold that night. Never again. His daughters would never again be cold. At St. Mary, Emma and Emily could hardly believe their luck when they were called to the principal's office. "These are for you," Sister Catherine smiled, handing them 2 boxes. Inside were new wool coats, winter boots, hats, gloves, and scarves, all top quality. "But how?" Emma began, stroking the soft fabric of the blue coat. "An anonymous donation," the nun explained. "A few families were selected to receive these gifts." Emily hugged her pink coat to her chest. "It's like magic, just like the angel with the ring." Sister Catherine frowned. "Which angel, dear?" "The nice man who bought our ring and gave us money for Mom's medicine," Emma explained enthusiastically. "He had kind eyes and—" Michael, watching the scene through the security cameras on his tablet, strategically installed after a donation for security improvements at the school, felt his heart ache. The girls called him an angel. If they only knew. A memory flashed. 5 years ago. Silicon Valley. "Congratulations, Mr. Anderson. Anderson Tech is officially a billion-dollar company." Champagne popped around him, executives and investors celebrating, but Michael felt only a vast emptiness. His augmented reality app had revolutionized the market. The company's stock had soared, and he was now officially one of the richest men in the world. That night, alone in his newly purchased penthouse, he held his first iPhone, a gift he intended to give Sarah when he returned victorious to New York. But Sarah had disappeared. Her emails went unanswered. Her old number didn't exist anymore, and her parents refused to give any information. If only he'd known she was pregnant. Present, his phone's ring brought him back to reality. It was the secretary from PS47, the second school where Sarah taught. "Mr. Anderson, the school supplies just arrived. They're really impressive. Make sure every student gets their kit," he instructed, especially those in Ms. Matthews's classes. In the weeks that followed, the plan unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Sarah regularly received letters from the New Dawn Foundation about her treatment. Her doctors, now the best cardiologists in the city, though she didn't know they had been specially hired, reported a significant improvement in her condition since she'd started taking the new medications provided by the foundation. The twins came home every day amazed at the coincidences happening at school. Today it was a new set of professional-grade colored pencils that the school decided to provide. Tomorrow, a fully subsidized educational field trip. The following week, an improved meal program in the cafeteria. Sarah watched all this with a mix of gratitude and growing suspicion. Her instincts told her something else was going on, that so many blessings at once couldn't be mere coincidence. But when she saw her daughters happy, well-fed, properly dressed for winter, she decided to swallow her doubts. One afternoon, as she was grading papers at her desk at St. Mary, a fellow teacher approached excitedly. "Sarah, you won't believe it. Remember that problem with the roof in your classroom? The school got a specific donation for structural repairs. Your room will be the first to be renovated." Sarah put her red pen down, a worried crease forming between her eyebrows. "Nancy, don't you think it's strange? All these donations, the mysterious foundation paying my treatment." Nancy shrugged. "There are good people in the world, Sarah. Maybe it's time to accept that you deserve good things too." In his office, Michael watched their conversation through the cameras, now with audio, after another donation for improvements. His heart hurt every time he saw Sarah, every time he noticed how much healthier she looked now that she was receiving the right treatment. Another flashback hit him. 4 years ago, New York. "Mr. Anderson, you've just been named one of Forbes' 30 under 30's most influential people." The article called him a tech genius, visionary, revolutionary, citing his cars, properties, and achievements. But sitting in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Michael could only think of Sarah. Where was she? Did she watch his TV interviews? Was she proud of him, or did she hate him for leaving? If only he'd known about the twins. Present. The intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Anderson, your lawyer is on line 3, Michael answered, still watching Sarah through the cameras. "The monthly transfers to the foundation's account are automated," the lawyer informed him. "And we arranged that private clinic spot you requested, in case her condition worsens." "Great," Michael hesitated. "And the apartment?" the landlord received a generous offer for the entire building. Once the sale is finalized, the new management will conveniently not raise her rent for the coming years. Michael hung up, satisfied. Every detail had been planned, every need anticipated. It was the least he could do, even from a distance. On his tablet, he watched Emma and Emily running across the schoolyard in their colorful new coats, laughing carefree as 5-year-olds should. Sarah crossed the yard, her face no longer pale and sickly, as if the direct link to her improved medication gave her more energy. She stopped to watch her daughters play, a gentle smile on her lips. Michael touched the screen softly, as if he could reach her through the glass. How much longer could he keep his distance? How long until the urge to hug his daughters, to explain everything to Sarah, became too strong to resist? For now, he would have to settle for this, being an invisible guardian angel, ensuring that his family, because that's what they were, even if they didn't know it, never went without again. That night, in his lonely penthouse, Michael held the sapphire ring against the light, the same ring 2 brave little girls had tried to sell to save their mother, the same ring that, years ago, symbolized a future he threw away for ambition. Now, that ring represented a second chance. Not today, not tomorrow, but one day, when the time was right, he would find the courage to reveal the truth. Until then, he would continue his silent vigil, protecting from afar the 3 most important people in his life. Across town, in the small Bronx apartment, Sarah fell asleep with her daughters nestled against her, one on each side. The girls wore new, warm pajamas, gifts from the school. On the table, the latest letter from the New Dawn Foundation waited to be opened. In her dreams, Sarah returned to that night 6 years ago, when she decided not to tell Michael about her pregnancy. If only she had known then what she knew now, but the past was the past. The present, with all its mysterious blessings, was what mattered. And somewhere, invisible yet always present, a guardian angel watched over them. An SUV pulled up discreetly a block away from St. Mary Elementary School. Michael adjusted his sunglasses, observing through the tinted glass as Sarah got off the bus, her 2 little colorful butterflies, Emma in blue, Emily in pink, skipping beside her. "Have a good day, my loves," he heard her say through the audio system he'd had installed strategically. Sarah knelt down, adjusting their hats, her face reflecting that unconditional love he remembered so well. "Behave, all right?" "Yes, Mom," the twins chorused, hugging her before running inside. Sarah watched until they disappeared, and only then did she let her shoulders slump, the mask of strength giving way to evident fatigue. She checked her watch. She had exactly 20 minutes to cross town to her second school. Michael watched her limp slightly toward the bus stop. The medical report on his desk had mentioned that her heart condition sometimes caused swelling in her legs. She should be resting, not running from one job to another. Inside the school, through cameras that now provided full coverage of the building, Michael kept track of his daughters. Emma sat in the front row, always raising her hand to answer questions, just like he'd been in school. Emily, quieter, doodled in the margins of her notebook between notes, her sketches showing surprising artistic talent. "Exactly like her mother," he murmured, recalling the drawings Sarah made in the margins of her literature books. 6 years ago. "You have to stop drawing in my programming books," he complained, but he was smiling. Sarah only shrugged, continuing to transform flowcharts into elaborate works of art. "I'm making your studying more interesting. Look, this while loop just turned into a carousel. Present." The sound of laughter brought Michael back. On the playground, Emma was organizing a group of children for an elaborate game that seemed to involve princesses and dragons. Emily, slightly apart, was comforting a classmate who had fallen down. "They're born leaders," Margaret commented, handing Michael more reports on the girls' activities. "Emma has your natural charisma, sir, and Emily has her mother's heart," Michael finished softly. At 47, Sarah was trying to stay awake during her last class of the day. Through the cameras, Michael could see how she occasionally placed a hand on her chest, taking deep breaths. The new medication was helping, but stress and exhaustion still took their toll. "Ms. Matthews?" Another teacher entered the room after the students left. The principal wants to see you. Michael turned up the audio, his heart beating faster. Had Sarah discovered something? Sarah, the principal began as soon as she walked in. Have you looked into this New Dawn Foundation? I tried, Sarah said, sitting down tiredly. But it's like chasing a ghost. The website is professional. The paperwork is impeccable, but there's something odd. It's like it appeared out of nowhere, especially to help you? Sarah nodded, biting her lower lip. That gesture Michael knew so well, now mirrored by Emily. And it's not just the foundation, she continued. It's all these donations at the schools, always benefiting my classes, my daughters. The renovations, the supplies, even that new lunch program. Michael made a mental note to make the donations less obvious, more widespread. Sarah had always been too perceptive. That night, after checking through the security cameras that Sarah and the girls had arrived home safely, Michael allowed himself a moment of weakness. He opened the drawer of his desk, taking out an envelope. They were photos of the twins he had printed from the recordings, Emma giving a class presentation, her eyes shining with the same intensity as in old photos of his younger self. Emily comforting friends, with that gentle smile that was an exact copy of Sarah's, his daughters. His precious little daughters, whom he watched through lenses and screens when he should be there, hugging them, helping with homework, telling bedtime stories. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Anderson, the board is waiting for the video conference. Michael put the photos away, straightened his tie and opened his laptop. Within minutes, he was discussing multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions with executives worldwide. But his mind was in a small apartment in the Bronx, where two little girls were probably doing their homework while their mom graded a pile of school papers. Later that night, his driver dropped him off near Sarah's building. From inside the car, he watched the lights on the third floor. Shadows moved behind the curtains, the girls likely getting ready for bed. A memory hit him. 6 years ago. When we have kids, Sarah said, snuggled in his arms on a study night. I want them to have your eyes. And your smile, he replied, kissing her forehead. And your brilliant brain. And your gentle heart. Present. The lights in the apartment went off one by one. Michael remained there, sitting in the dark, wrestling with the overwhelming desire to climb those stairs, knock on that door, and finally hug his daughters. But what right did he have? Sarah had chosen not to tell him about the pregnancy. She had built a life without him, protected and raised their daughters alone. His sudden entrance now could cause more harm than good. Even so, with each passing day, it became harder to keep his distance. Every smile on the recordings, every moment of Sarah's weariness, every tiny discovery about the girls' personalities and talents, everything pulled at him like an invisible magnet. Home, sir? His driver asked after nearly an hour. Michael nodded reluctantly. Tomorrow would be another day of silent observation, of distant protection, of withheld love. Another day pretending his heart didn't reside in that simple Bronx building with the three most important people in his life. In his pocket, the sapphire ring seemed to burn, constantly reminding him of past choices and future possibilities. For now, he would continue his quiet vigil, ensuring his family had everything they needed, even from afar. But how much longer could he remain only an observer of his own life? It all started with a cough. Emily got it first, during recess on a particularly cold afternoon. The next day, Emma also showed symptoms. Within 48 hours, the twins were burning up with fever. 239 degrees, Sarah murmured, looking worriedly at the thermometer. Emma's forehead was far too warm under her hand. In the bed next to her, Emily coughed incessantly, her little face reddened by the effort. Mom, Emma called in a weak voice, you can't miss work because of us. Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. Her 5-year-old daughter's already worried about things children shouldn't have to think about. Don't worry about that, my loves. Now close your eyes and try to rest. Across the city, Michael watched the scene through cameras he had installed, a security system donated to the building. His heart clenched with every cough, every time Sarah checked their temperatures with trembling hands. Margaret, he called his assistant over the intercom, get in touch with Dr. Jensen, tell him I need a house call urgently. Address in the Bronx. But sir, Dr. Jensen is a celebrity pediatrician. He doesn't do house calls. Offer whatever it takes. 2 hours later, a knock on Sarah's door made her heart jump. Through the cameras, Michael saw her open it, confused to find one of New York's most renowned pediatricians. Ms. Matthews, I received a notification from the hospital about your daughters, part of our new home care program. Sarah frowned. She hadn't contacted any hospital, but before she could question him, Emily had another particularly harsh coughing fit, and that quickly took precedence. The doctor examined the girls thoroughly. Influenza A, he diagnosed, already separating samples of medication he'd brought along. And by the sound of that cough, it's starting to develop into bronchitis. Doctor, Sarah hesitated. I can't possibly... Everything's already covered by the program, Ms. Matthews, including follow-up visits I'll make in the coming days. In his office, Michael watched everything, mentally noting each detail of the prescribed treatment, but his main concern now was Sarah. Even through the cameras, he could see how pale she was, how her breathing seemed more labored than usual. The next morning, Sarah tried to get ready for work, but her legs barely supported her. Mom, don't go, Emma pleaded, her voice raspy. You're not well. I'm fine, sweetheart, just a little tired. But you're breathing funny, Emily observed between coughs. Sarah ignored the growing pain in her chest. She couldn't afford to be sick. Not now. She'd already missed 2 days taking care of the girls, and even with the free medicine from the mysterious hospital program, the bills kept coming. Watching her, Michael felt torn apart. Sarah was clearly on the verge of collapse, but too stubborn to admit it. The girls, even while ill, could sense how dire things were. Mr. Anderson. Margaret entered his office with a worried expression. Ms. Matthews's latest test results are in her heart condition. How long until she has a crisis? If she keeps pushing like this, days, maybe hours. Michael closed his eyes, feeling the weight of each second of passive observation. On the monitor, he saw Sarah stumbling around the kitchen, trying to make tea for the girls while clutching her own chest. Emma, he heard Emily whisper to her sister when Sarah went to the bathroom. It's our fault. Mom's getting sicker because she has to take care of us. It's not our fault, Emma replied, though her voice was laced with guilt. It's because we're poor. If we were rich like that man with the ring... Michael felt his heart break. His daughters, feverish and ill, blaming themselves for the family's precarious situation. Sarah fighting a severe heart condition while working herself to the bone. And he, with all his billions, just watching through screens. In the afternoon, things worsened. The girls' fevers spiked again, and Sarah could barely stand. When she went to get more water for them, she staggered, dropping the glass, which shattered on the floor. Mom! The twins cried in unison, trying to get out of their beds. Stay in bed, Sarah ordered weakly, leaning against the wall. Her vision blurred, and the pain in her chest had turned into unbearable pressure. In his office, Michael was already standing, grabbing his coat. Margaret, cancel all my appointments and call an ambulance for the address in the Bronx, now. Sir, what are you going to do? Michael paused at the door, the sapphire ring feeling heavier than ever in his pocket. No more watching from a distance. They're my family, and they need me. In the Bronx apartment, Sarah slid down the wall to the floor, her breathing becoming more labored by the second. The twins, though sick, struggled to get out of bed to reach her. Mom, Emma cried out. Emily, we have to call for help. How? Emily sobbed. We don't have a phone, and the neighbor's out of town. Sarah tried to tell them she'd be fine, but no words came. The edges of her vision darkened. Her last coherent thought was a silent prayer for someone, somewhere, to care for her girls. Somewhere in the city, an ambulance switched on its siren, racing against time, and a black SUV sped through Manhattan toward the Bronx, its driver gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. The time for silent observation was over. It was time for Michael Anderson to finally face his past, his decisions, and, more importantly, his family. The Bronx building had never seemed so intimidating. Michael ran up the stairs with his heart hammering in his chest, each step a test of courage. The terrified screams of the twins echoed down the hallway, guiding him to apartment 302. He didn't need to knock. The door was ajar, and the sight that met him froze his blood. Sarah lying on the floor near the kitchen, the twins and still sick, trying to reach her from their beds. "Mom!" Emma shouted, her voice raw from the flu. "Please, wake up!" Emily sobbed. Michael acted on instinct. In 3 strides, he was at Sarah's side, checking her vital signs. Her skin was cold and clammy, her breathing shallow. "Emily, stay in bed," he ordered, his voice firm but gentle. "I've already called an ambulance. Everything will be okay." That was when Sarah groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she looked disoriented. Then her gaze focused on the face above her, and the world seemed to stop. "Me? Michael?" The word came out as a broken whisper, carrying 6 years' worth of unspoken emotions. Sarah's eyes, already clouded by pain, filled with tears. "It can't be. You can't." "Mom!" the twins exclaimed in unison. "It's the ring man!" Sarah tried to get up abruptly, but her legs buckled. Michael caught her before she fell again. "Don't touch me!" she tried to shout, but her voice was weak. "You have no right." After all this time. "Sarah, please," Michael pleaded, still supporting her. "You need to stay calm. Your heart—" "How do you know?" Her eyes widened with sudden comprehension. "The anonymous donations, the doctor, the medication. It was you." The distant sound of sirens filled the tense silence that followed. Sarah tried to pull away from Michael's arms, but another spasm of pain seized her. "Mom!" Emily cried, again trying to get out of bed. "Stay in bed, girls," Michael ordered gently. "Your mom needs to rest until the ambulance arrives." "Why are you here?" Sarah asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Why now?" "Because our daughters came looking for me one snowy night, trying to sell the ring I gave you." Sarah's face grew even paler. "You know that they're my daughters?" "Yes, Sarah." One look was all it took, my eyes in them, your smile, our— "No," she interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "You don't have that right. Not after you left, after you chose your career over— You never told me about the pregnancy." His voice trembled. "Why, Sarah? Why hide something so—" The arrival of the paramedics cut the argument short. Within minutes, everyone was on the way to the hospital. Sarah in the ambulance, Michael following with the twins in his car. "Mr. Michael," Emma called from the back seat, her voice small and scared. "Is our mom going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to the best hospital in the city." "Why was Mom mad to see you?" Emily asked, coughing. Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter. How could he explain 6 years of absence to 2 5-year-olds? At the hospital, Sarah was rushed to intensive care. Michael used his influence to secure the best room, the best doctors. The twins, exhausted and still feverish, finally fell asleep on a sofa bed next to their mother. Hours passed. When Sarah finally woke, she was alone in the room with Michael. The girls had been taken for tests. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked softly, breaking the heavy silence. Sarah turned her face toward the window, silent tears rolling down. "Do you remember the last time you saw my parents?" Michael nodded. How could he forget the contempt in their eyes? 2 weeks after you left, I found out I was pregnant. I ran to tell them, thinking a grandchild would change everything." She let out a bitter laugh. "You know what my father said, that it was better I take care of the problem before ruining my life with a child from someone who would never amount to anything." Shock and anger coursed through Michael like electricity. "But you didn't." "Of course not. They were our babies." "Ours," her voice broke. "But they gave me an ultimatum, either do what they wanted or be disowned, kicked out, so I ran away. I changed my number, my address, started a new life away from them." "Why didn't you come to me? I would have come back. I would have—" "Given up your dream," she interrupted. "Michael, you had just landed that incredible investment. You were about to achieve everything you ever wanted. How could I show up pregnant and dump that responsibility on you?" "I had the right to know," he argued. "They're my daughters too. And what would you have done? Married me out of obligation? Spent your life resenting me and the girls for holding you back? Never, Michael whispered, his voice thick with emotion. So you'd never be an obstacle. Sarah, look at me. He waited until she turned her face. All these years, all the success, it's been empty. Something was always missing. Mom? A small voice interrupted. Emma and Emily were back, still pale but clearly better after receiving medication. Come here, my little ones, Sarah called softly. There's something we need to talk about. The girls climbed onto the hospital bed, one on each side of their mother. Michael watched, his heart aching, as they naturally nestled against Sarah, trusting her completely. Do you remember when you asked about your dad? Sarah began gently. The twins nodded. Emma gave Michael a curious look, as if she was already figuring it out. Michael, the man who bought your ring. He's your father. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily was the first to speak, her wide eyes locked on Michael. That's why you have eyes like ours. Michael felt tears slip out. Yes, sweetheart. Is that why you helped us? Emma asked. No, he answered honestly. I helped because I saw two brave girls trying to help their mother. I only realized afterward that you were my daughters. But why did you never come before? Emily asked in a small voice. Because I didn't know, Michael explained, glancing at Sarah. Your mom was very brave and strong, raising you on her own when times were hard. I should have been here. Are you going away again? Emma asked bluntly, her eyes so much like his, filled with fear and hope. Michael stepped closer to the bed, kneeling so he was at their level. Never again. If you and your mom allow me, I want to be part of your life. I want to know everything about you, every story, every... His voice faltered when Emily, without warning, threw her arms around his neck. Emma followed a second later. The hug was awkward, with the girls still on the hospital bed, but to Michael, it was the most perfect moment of his life. Sarah watched the scene through tear-filled eyes. 6 years of secrets, lonely struggles, countless nights wondering if she had made the right choice, all culminating in this moment. We still have a lot to talk about, she said softly after the girls finally released Michael. He nodded, wiping his own tears. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for those lost years. Dad, Emma tested the word, making Michael's heart leap. You're rich, right? Like in the movies. Michael chuckled softly, noticing Sarah's worried look. Yes, sweetheart. But the greatest wealth I've ever had is right here in this room. So can we get a dog? Emily asked hopefully, making everyone laugh. The tension in the room began to ease, slowly. As the girls bombarded Michael with questions about his life, his likes, his stories, Sarah watched with a complex mix of emotions. There was still so much to resolve, so many wounds to heal. Anger and hurt from 6 years wouldn't vanish overnight, but seeing Michael with the girls, the way his eyes lit up as he discovered every little detail about them, how he drank in every word like a man starving in a desert, maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Sarah, Michael called softly once the twins finally fell asleep again, exhausted but happy. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to be part of their lives, to help you, to maybe build something new with time. We can't go back, she said, voice trembling. The past is the past. But maybe, she hesitated, looking at her daughters sleeping peacefully, maybe we can build something new. For their sake. Michael nodded, understanding what she left unsaid. It would be a long road filled with tough conversations and delicate moments, but looking at Emma and Emily, his little princesses brought back to him by a ring on a snowy night, he knew it would be worth every second. In his pocket, the sapphire ring suddenly felt lighter. It was no longer a symbol of regrets and wrong choices, but of redemption and second chances. And maybe, one day, when the wounds had healed and new bonds had been forged, he could use it again for its original purpose. For now, he was content to watch his family, yes, his family, sleeping peacefully in the hospital room. The empire he built, the billions he amassed, none of it compared to this moment. At last, Michael Anderson was home. The hospital room was immersed in the hush of early morning. broken only by the soft beeping of heart monitors. Michael woke slowly, his neck protesting the night spent in the uncomfortable armchair. For a moment, he felt disoriented. The sterile environment, the smell of disinfectant, the cold morning light filtering through the window. Then his eyes landed on Sarah in the hospital bed, and the reality of the last few days hit him hard. He was a father. The word echoed in his mind like a mantra, impossible to fully grasp. A father. Of twins. Of two extraordinary girls who, by some miracle of fate, had found him on a snowy night with a ring that would change all their lives. His thoughts were interrupted by a gentle stirring from the bed. Sarah was waking up, her eyes opening slowly and focusing first on the ceiling, then on him. For a moment, her expression was confused, then came recognition, and finally an emotion Michael couldn't fully decipher. "The girls?" she asked, her voice still husky from sleep. "They're home with Nurse Angela," he replied gently. "They slept well, according to the last text I got." Sarah nodded, carefully adjusting herself in bed. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words, unasked questions, 6 years of stories untold. "They started walking at 10 months, Sarah broke the silence suddenly, surprising Michael. Emma was first, always the more adventurous. 3 days later, Emily followed, not because she was ready, but because she couldn't stand seeing her sister doing something she couldn't. Michael leaned forward in the chair, drinking in every word like a parched man. "Tell me more, please." The request came out more vulnerable than he intended, but it worked. Maybe it was the timing, maybe it was the neutral hospital setting, or maybe Sarah was just tired of carrying all these memories alone. She began to speak, and the stories flowed like a river long dammed up. Their first tooth. God, that was quite an adventure. Emily's came in first on a rainy Tuesday. She was so proud, showing that tiny tooth to everyone. Emma was absolutely outraged. She spent 2 whole days refusing to smile, like she was protesting the injustice of the universe. Michael could picture it clearly in his mind, an involuntary smile forming on his lips. Their first word was, "Mama." "Of course," Sarah went on, a touch of maternal pride in her voice. But after that, they went in completely different directions. Emma began babbling non-stop, making sounds only she understood, like she had her own language. Emily, on the other hand, she just observed everything quietly, taking in the world around her. When she finally spoke, it was always something surprisingly thoughtful for such a tiny child. "What are they like at school?" Michael asked, hungry for more details. "Emma is our little scientist, asking a million questions and wanting to know how everything works. The other day, she took apart the alarm clock just to see what was inside." Sarah laughed softly at the memory. "Emily is more artistic. She's always drawing, seeing beauty in everything. Last week, she came home so excited because she realized clouds cast different shadows depending on the time of day." Michael soaked up every detail, building a mental mosaic of his daughters. Then Sarah said something that took him by surprise. "They both have your way of frowning when they're concentrating at, exactly how you did during calculus exams. The first time I noticed, Emma was trying to tie her shoelaces, and she made that same expression. I almost couldn't breathe." The confession hovered between them, laden with pent-up emotion. Michael felt his throat tighten. "Why did you never—" he began, but was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Nurse Angela with the twins, already dressed for school in neatly pressed uniforms, though their eyes were still heavy with sleep. "Mom!" they exclaimed in unison, rushing to the bed. Then, almost as an afterthought but with no less enthusiasm, "Dad!" The word was still new, experimental on their little tongues, but to Michael it was music. His heart swelled in his chest in a way he had never felt before. "Good morning, my princesses," he smiled, noticing how Emma still sniffled a bit and Emily suppressed a small cough. "I think we'll need to skip school today, what do you think?" Their faces lit up instantly, but Sarah intervened. "Michael, they can't just miss school like that. Just for today," he pleaded, and there was something in his eyes, a silent plea for a few more moments with the daughters he had just found. That made Sarah hesitate, then relent. All right, she sighed. But only today. The day that followed felt like a strange, wonderful dream, filled with small discoveries and big revelations. Michael learned that Emma adored dinosaurs, especially the velociraptor because it was small but really smart, and that Emily could spend hours talking about different shades of sunset. Yesterday it was more orange, but the day before it had some pink shades too. During lunch, ordered from a nearby restaurant known for its homemade food, the questions began. It was as if the girls, realizing they were allowed to be curious, couldn't hold back their thirst to learn more about this father they had only just discovered. "What's your favorite color?" Emma asked between bites of pasta. "Blue," Michael answered promptly, "like the sky on a clear day." "Just like me," Emily exclaimed happily. "Mum, did you know Dad likes blue too?" Sarah only smiled, but Michael noticed how her eyes softened a bit at the girl's excitement. "Do you have a pet?" Emma asked next. "No, but I've always wanted a dog." "We do too," the twins answered in unison, exchanging meaningful looks that made Michael laugh. "Dad," Emma started, her voice taking on a more serious tone that was almost comical coming from a 5-year-old, "why are you so rich?" "Emma," Sarah scolded, but Michael just chuckled. "Because I had an idea for an app, a computer program, that helps people see the world in a different way," he explained, trying to keep it simple. "But you know what? All the money in the world doesn't compare to how happy I am that I found you." "But you'll stay rich, right?" Emily asked pragmatically. "Because I really want a kitten." "Emily," Emma scolded her sister, perfectly mimicking Sarah's earlier tone, making everyone laugh. Not all moments were light-hearted. Throughout the day, Michael began to notice subtle patterns in the girls' behavior, how they occasionally glanced at the door as if afraid he might disappear at any moment, how they approached him physically with caution, testing boundaries, checking if he would push them away. Sarah noticed too. Every time she saw those small signs of insecurity in the twins, a shadow passed over her eyes. Michael knew they had to talk, set boundaries, define expectations. But for now, he focused on being present, on absorbing every moment. In the afternoon, Emma decided she needed to show him all the drawings she had done at school. Luckily, Sarah always carried a folder of the girls' work in her bag. Michael examined each piece of art with genuine attention, asking questions, praising details, memorizing every stroke as if they were priceless treasures. Emily, quieter but equally eager for attention, sat next to him, explaining the story behind each of her sister's drawings, adding her own commentary, and occasionally mentioning how she would have done it differently. It was during one of these explanations that Michael noticed. Emily tilted her head slightly to the side when she was thinking exactly the way Sarah used to. The gesture was so familiar, so precious in its simplicity, that he felt his eyes fill with tears. When evening came and the girls needed to go home, there was a tense moment. Emma clung to his leg, initially refusing to let go. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "I will," Michael promised, kneeling down to look her in the eye. "And the day after tomorrow too, and every day after that I'll never disappear from your life again." Emily, who had been watching silently, came closer then. "Promise?" "I promise," he replied solemnly, holding out his pinky finger for a pinky swear, something he'd learned was very serious in the world of 5-year-olds. After the girls left with Nurse Angela, the room felt heavy with silence. It was time for the conversation they'd avoided all day. "How are we going to do this, Michael?" Sarah finally asked, her voice exhausted yet firm. "You have your life, your company." "I'm moving back to New York," he answered without hesitation. "I've already given instructions to prepare the main office here. The company can be run from anywhere and—" "No!" Sarah cut him off more sharply than she intended. "You can't just reorganize your whole life like that, suddenly." "Why not?" Michael came closer to the bed, his voice fervent. "For my daughters, for you. Sarah, look at me. 6 years ago, I chose ambition over our love. It was the biggest mistake of my life, and only now do I truly see how huge that mistake was. I won't make it again." "It's not that simple." "No, it's not," he agreed, sitting on the edge of the bed and in a bold gesture, taking her hand. When she didn't pull away, he continued, "But it doesn't have to be as complicated as we're making it. I'm not asking us to go back to what we were. I'm just asking for a chance to be the father of our daughters, to help you, maybe, in time, to rebuild something new." The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of boundaries and discoveries. Michael rented an apartment in the same neighborhood, large enough for the girls to have their own room when they visited, but not so flashy as to create a stark contrast with the life they were used to. He established a routine of taking the girls to school in the morning, turning each car ride into an opportunity to get to know them better. It was fascinating how each day brought a new discovery. Emma was definitely a morning person, waking up brimming with energy and plans for the day. Emily, on the other hand, needed at least 20 minutes and a cup of hot chocolate to function properly. And then the teacher said my science project was the best in the class. Emma chattered one morning, practically bouncing in the back seat. I did a whole experiment about why plants need sunlight. But my drawing won the school contest, Emily added sleepily, not wanting to be left out. I drew our family. That last statement made Michael nearly lose control of the car. Our family. The concept still felt surreal to him. At night, they set up a routine of video calls to help with homework. It was impressive how Emma had inherited his ease with numbers, while Emily could spend hours drawing, exactly how Sarah used to doodle on the margins of books during their university days. Their first outings were lessons in patience and discovery. One Sunday at the zoo revealed that Emily had a deep fear of snakes. "They have no legs, Dad. How is that normal?" While Emma was fascinated by penguins. "Did you know they can swim up to 25 miles per hour?" Sarah initially resisted these family activities, but seeing the genuine happiness of the girls gradually wore down her hesitation. "They need this," she admitted one afternoon in the park, watching Michael push the twins on the swings. "They need a father. They need memories like these." But not everything went smoothly. The first time Michael had to set a boundary was a significant test for all of them. "But Dad, just one chocolate," Emma begged before dinner, using her best puppy dog eyes. "Your mum already set the rules about sweets before meals." He remained firm, even though her gaze nearly melted his heart. "We have to respect them." It was a tense moment, his first real experience with parental discipline. To his surprise, Sarah backed him up. "You heard your dad, Emma." Emma. Rules are rules no matter who set them. It was a decisive moment that Sarah observed carefully from the kitchen. For the first time, she saw Michael truly acting as a father, not just trying to be the fun friend who made up for lost time with gifts and indulgences. Something shifted inside her at that moment, a tiny crack in the wall of protection she'd built up over the years. The twins also had their moments of confusion and insecurity. During one of the weekly family dinners they had begun hosting, Emily surprised everyone with a question. "If you're our dad, why don't you live with us like Lisa's dad lives with her?" The silence that fell over the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah set her utensils aside, carefully thinking through her answer. "Sometimes, sweetheart, parents can love their children very much even if they live in different houses," she explained with a gentleness that surprised Michael. "What's important is that your dad is here now, right?" "But is he staying?" Emma asked, voicing the fear both girls carried. Michael put down his fork and held out his hands across the table, one for each daughter. "Always. I may not live in the same house, but I'm here to stay. Forever." Michael's professional life underwent big adjustments. Video conferences were often interrupted by calls from the girls' school. Important meetings rescheduled so he could attend class presentations. His executives had to adapt to a CEO who now prioritized dinner time with his daughters over cocktails with investors. "Mr. Anderson," Margaret commented one day, handing him some reports, "I've never seen you so tired and so happy." It was true. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys. The first time he managed to do the girls' braids by himself, after countless YouTube tutorials and several failed attempts, was a personal triumph. When Emma sought him out first, not Sarah, after a nightmare, he almost cried with emotion. The drawing Emily made for Father's Day at school, depicting the whole family including him, now hung framed in his office. Sarah watched it all with a complex blend of emotions. She saw how genuinely Michael tried, how he put the girls above everything else, how he was truly committed to being a good father. Gradually, the barriers she had erected began to show cracks. One night, after the girls were asleep, she found him in the kitchen looking at old photos of the twins on his phone. "Do you want to see the full albums?" she offered hesitantly. Michael's eyes lit up. For hours, sitting on the worn-out couch, they revisited moments he had missed. First smiles, first steps, first days of school. Sarah surprised herself by sharing stories, laughing over memories, allowing herself to lower her guard a bit more. "Thank you," he said softly when they were done, late into the night. "For what?" "For being so strong, for raising them so well, for giving me this chance now." Sarah didn't answer, but something in her eyes softened. Over the following months, a new normal began to take shape. Michael learned every quirk of his daughters. How Emma needed her favorite socks to sleep. How Emily would only eat carrots if they were cut into star shapes. How both had different ways of asking for a hug when they were sad. The girls thrived on the shared attention, realizing they didn't need to compete for any parent's love. Sarah, seeing Michael's consistent effort, started involving him more in decisions about the girls, from school choices to medical issues. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days, moments of doubt, small conflicts over boundaries and responsibilities. Sometimes Michael found himself mourning lost years, wondering how life might have been if he'd known about the pregnancy. Sometimes Sarah struggled with memories of the past, fears about the future. But there was also laughter at breakfast, spontaneous hugs, small daily victories that made it all worthwhile, like when Emma won the science fair with a project on apps, clearly inspired by her dad. Or when Emily painted a family portrait that was displayed in the school hallway. One afternoon, watching the girls play in the new bedroom he had furnished in his apartment, Emma with her little scientist kit, Emily drawing on a professional easel, Michael realized something crucial. He was no longer just making up for lost time. He was, at last, simply being a father. And perhaps that, more than anything else, was the real miracle of the snowy night that had changed all their lives. Spring arrived in New York, bringing renewal. Sarah, after months of proper treatment, finally saw significant improvements in her health. Her medical checkups now brought good news, and she could climb the stairs of her building without difficulty. "Your tests look excellent, Mr. Matthews," the cardiologist smiled. "Keep this up and we'll soon be able to reduce your medication." The twins also blossomed, fully recovered from the flu that had stricken them months before. Emma resumed her top spot in science, while Emily surprised everyone with a regional art award. The discovery that would change everything happened one spring Saturday afternoon. Sarah had decided to do a bit of spring cleaning, and Michael was helping, mainly because the girls insisted on showing off their treasures they'd stored away. "Dad, look!" Emma exclaimed, pulling out a box decorated with stars. "Our baby photos." But it was Emily who found the crucial item, digging deeper into the closet. "Mom, what's in this box?" Sarah froze when she saw the old metal box in her daughter's hands. Emma, always curious, had already opened it. "They're letters. Letters I wrote to your dad," Sarah admitted softly. "Over the years, I never mailed them." After sending the girls to play in their room, Sarah opened the box. Dozens of letters, organized chronologically, told the story of the lost years. The first, written on the night Michael left. "Dear Michael, you left today. I should have told you about my suspicion of pregnancy, but your eyes shone so brightly talking about the startup. I took the test as soon as I got home. Positive. I'm carrying a part of you and you're thousands of miles away, chasing your destiny. How can I tell you now? How can I possibly interfere with your dreams? Love, Sarah." The letter about discovering the twins. "Mike, or they're twins. 2 little lives we created. My parents found out. It was as terrible as I imagined. Dad demanded I take care of it. I ran away. I have a small apartment in the Bronx now. I see your name in the news. How can I show up and possibly destroy everything you've built?" Sarah. Their birth. "Dear Michael, our daughters were born today. Emma came first, announcing her arrival to the world. Emily followed soon after, silent but alert. They're perfect. Emma has your eyes, Emily your smile. I promised them they'd never lack for love even if you don't know they exist. Sarah. The passing years. Mike. Papa. They said that first word today. How do I explain their dad is the man on the cover of Forbes? That he didn't abandon us, he just doesn't know we exist. I turn on the TV to see your interviews. You seem different now, more mature, but when you smile, I still see that boy in the library, scribbling code on napkins. Sarah. Discovering her illness. Dear Michael, the doctor says I need to slow down. My heart isn't well. But how? Our daughters need to eat, need a decent life. Emma is brilliant at science, it's in her blood. Emily has a rare gift for art. I still keep the ring, the girls asked about it. How to explain it represents unrealized dreams. Sarah. The last letter, written weeks before the snowy encounter. Michael, 5 years. Sometimes I can't believe how much time has passed. I saw you on the news. Anderson Tech is growing more and more. Did I make the right choice? Protecting you or being selfish? My health is getting worse. The meds are too expensive. The girls notice, no matter how hard I try to hide it. Maybe one day they'll find you on their own. Maybe then you'll know about them. I hope you can forgive me. With eternal love, Sarah. Michael finished reading with tears in his eyes. Late afternoon silence enveloped the room. Why are you showing me this now? He asked softly. Because you deserve to know everything, every thought, every fear, every moment lost. Sarah took a shaky breath. And because maybe it's time to stop being afraid. Michael sat beside her, holding her trembling hands. You protected our daughters the best way you knew. It hurts to have missed so much. But I understand. You've always been the stronger one. I don't feel strong, she whispered. I'm tired of building walls, of keeping distance. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. Sarah wasn't expecting anyone. Michael answered it and froze. An elegant couple stood in the hallway. Dr. Matthews and his wife, Sarah's parents. Where is my daughter? Doctor, Matthews demanded, his voice trembling. Sarah appeared, stunned. Mum, Dad, how? We found out about your illness, Mrs. Matthews cut in. Why didn't you come to us? Mom, is someone here? Emma and Emily peeked down the hallway. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Matthews covered her mouth, tears welling up. Are they our granddaughters? They look so much like... Dr. Matthews began. Me, Michael completed firmly. They're my daughters too. Sarah pulled the girls protectively into her arms. Emma, Emily, these are your grandparents. Why didn't you ever come before? Emma asked innocently. The question hit the couple like a blow. Dr. Matthews suddenly looked older. May we come in? We have a lot to discuss. While the girls ate pizza watching TV, the adults gathered in the kitchen. Martha Williams saw us at the hospital, Mrs. Matthews explained. Why didn't you reach out, Sarah? Why? Sarah laughed bitterly. Maybe because you kicked me out when I needed you most. We were wrong, Dr. Matthews admitted, crying openly. Terribly wrong. We only thought about reputation, about what people would say. We never saw our daughter needed help. And now? Sarah asked wearily. A chance, her mother begged. To know our granddaughters, to fix our mistakes. Do you have any idea what she's been through? Michael interjected. She worked 2 jobs, battled a severe illness, raised 2 extraordinary girls while you worried about appearances. You're right, Dr. Matthews conceded. About everything. We're here asking for forgiveness, a chance to be part of their lives. Mom, Emily interrupted, can we have dessert? The innocence of the request broke the tension. Sarah looked at her daughters, so unaware of the heavy moment. Show your grandparents where we keep the cookies, she said softly. As the girls led their grandparents to the cabinet, Michael held Sarah's hand. We don't need to decide everything now. We can take it slow, see how the girls feel. Sarah watched her daughters already chatting happily about cookies and school with their grandparents. They deserve to have grandparents, she decided, but on our terms, no pressure, no judgment on our choices. The letters in the metal box told a story of love, sacrifice, and redemption. Now it was time for a new chapter, one of reconciliation and second chances. It wouldn't be easy. There were many wounds to heal, a lot of trust to rebuild, but seeing her daughters smile with their grandparents, Sarah allowed herself a glimmer of hope. If she and Michael could reconnect after 6 years, perhaps there was hope for her family as well. And in Michael's pocket, the sapphire ring that started it all pulsed with new possibilities. Summer arrived in New York, bringing with it not only heat, but also subtle, profound changes, for the family fate had so unexpectedly reunited. The small Bronx apartment, once a solitary refuge for Sarah and the twins, now buzzed with a different energy on weekends. On one particularly pleasant Sunday morning, Michael watched from the kitchen as Dr. Matthews, with almost comical seriousness, tried to learn the rules of a board game Emma had invented. The rules seemed to change every 5 minutes, much to the grandfather's confusion, but he persisted with surprising patience. "No, Grandpa," Emma explained for the 10th time. "You can only move the blue piece after the moon shows up on the dice. But you said it was the sun that was before the dragon joined the game," she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Out on the balcony, Emily was showing her new sketchbook to her grandmother, who was genuinely moved by each drawing. Mrs. Matthews had discovered in her quieter granddaughter a natural artist, and now appeared weekly with new art supplies she had stumbled upon at the art store. Sarah approached Michael, handing him a cup of coffee. "Who would have thought, huh?" she murmured, a faint smile playing on her lips. "The last few weeks hadn't been easy." Setting boundaries with Sarah's parents required several frank talks and some tense moments. Michael vividly remembered one heated argument when Dr. Matthews suggested enrolling the twins in an elite private school. "They already have a school," Sarah had said firmly. "One where they're happy, have friends, and teachers who've known them since they were tiny. But with the resources Michael has now, it's not about money, Dad. It's about stability, about not uprooting them from a place where they feel safe just because now we can afford something more expensive." Surprisingly, Michael was the one who most supported this decision. "Our daughters don't need a prestigious school name on their record," he argued. "They need a normal childhood, real friends, authentic experiences." Slowly, the Matthews began to understand that their role was not to reshape the life Sarah had built, but to fit respectfully into it. The visits, initially tense and formal, grew more natural. Emma was the first to really open up to her grandparents, her outgoing nature overcoming any initial wariness. Emily took longer, quietly observing for weeks before finally showing her grandmother her secret drawing spot on the balcony. "You know what surprises me the most?" Sarah mentioned one evening after everyone had gone. "How they're really trying, not just with the girls, but with me as well." Indeed, Dr. Matthews had openly wept upon learning of the financial hardships Sarah faced amid her health struggles. Mrs. Matthews spent hours listening to stories of the twins as babies, absorbing every detail of missed milestones, her silent tears speaking louder than words. Meanwhile, Michael had spent these weeks on a secret mission. The letters Sarah had written over the years inspired him to create something special. Late at night in his apartment, he carefully curated excerpts, memories, and moments that told not just their story, but the future they could still build. The moment he chose for his surprise couldn't have been more perfect. It was the twins' 6th birthday, and the whole family was gathered at the park for a picnic celebration. The girls played with other children, their laughter echoing in the sunny afternoon. "Sarah," he called gently, taking her hand, "want to go for a walk?" They strolled to a nearby cluster of trees, where Michael had prepared a little surprise. Hanging from the lower branches, protected in transparent envelopes, were all the letters she had written over the years. "Michael, what is this?" "These are our memories," he replied, guiding her among the letters. "Not just the ones we lived together, but the ones you kept all this time." Sarah touched the envelopes with trembling fingers, recognizing her own handwriting, her own words written in moments of solitude and hope. "But there's something different here," she noticed, seeing new envelopes mixed in with the old. "My answers," Michael explained. "For every letter of yours I wrote a response, what I would have said if I'd received it, what I feel now reading it, what I hope for our future." With tears in her eyes, Sarah began reading Michael's replies. "Dear Sarah, if I had received your letter that night, I would have been on the first plane back. No dream, no company, nothing would be worth it without you, without them. But fate had other plans, and maybe we needed these years to grow into who we are today. You were incredibly strong, brave and loving. You raised our daughters with values no money can buy. Now, if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life being the man you always believed I could be." The final letter hung alone on a lower branch. When Sarah opened it, she found no words but the sapphire ring that had started their journey. And kneeling before her was Michael, his eyes shining with love and hope. "Sarah Matthews," he began, his voice shaking with emotion. "You wrote to me for 6 years, holding on to every moment, every feeling, every hope. Now I want to spend the rest of my life answering each of those letters, with actions, with love, with commitment. Will you marry me?" Sarah's yes was barely audible between her sobs, but her embrace said it all. That was when they heard applause and laughter. Everyone had quietly gathered to witness the moment. "Finally," Emma exclaimed, jumping with joy. "Does this mean we'll all live together?" Emily asked hopefully. Sarah's parents approached, both openly crying. Dr. Matthews hugged his daughter, and then, to everyone's surprise, extended his hand to Michael. "Take good care of them," he said simply. "All of them. Always," Michael promised, sealing not just his commitment to Sarah but to the entire family they had built. Epilogue. 6 months later. The new apartment was spacious but not ostentatious, close enough to the girls' school to maintain their routine, yet with enough rooms to accommodate their growing family. The living room walls proudly displayed Emily's drawings alongside Emma's science awards. Sarah, fully recovered and now working at just one school by choice, coordinated an art project with Emily, while Emma and Michael pored over a science experiment at the kitchen table. The sapphire ring shone on her finger, now accompanied by a wedding band. It was no longer a symbol of interrupted dreams, but rather of an extraordinary journey of love, forgiveness, and redemption. The Matthews visited regularly for dinner, bringing not only gifts for their granddaughters, but also stories of Sarah's childhood, memories that slowly rebuilt the bridges pride had once burned. Michael balanced his business and family life masterfully, transforming an entire floor of Anderson Tech into a model daycare for employees, inspired, of course, by his own experiences. The twins thrived in the multiplied love surrounding them. Emma was already talking about creating her own apps, "When I Grow Up," while Emily dreamed of having her own art gallery with a special science corner for Emma so she doesn't feel sad. One quiet night, after tucking the girls in, Sarah found Michael on the balcony, gazing out at the city. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, hugging him from behind. "How unpredictable life is," he replied, turning to her. 6 years building an empire, thinking I had everything, when in truth my real fortune was here, in a little Bronx apartment. And to think it all started with a ring on a snowy night. "No," Michael said softly. "It began with your love, your courage, your strength in raising our daughters. The ring was just fate giving us a second chance." Sarah smiled, nestling into his arms. Inside, their daughters slept safe and sound. Somewhere in the city, her parents were likely planning the next visit. And there, on the balcony of their new home, she and Michael savored the peace of a love that had survived time, pride, and distance. The sapphire ring captured the city lights, its facets telling a story of loss and reunion, of secrets revealed and bridges rebuilt, a story that proved sometimes destiny has better plans than our own, and that true love always finds its way home.